Our amazing keynote for today, Solange, arrived in Canada as a 13-year-old refugee who had just survived war and genocide. She worked hard to catch up and learned quickly that for every problem, there had to be a solution. And that solution had to be fast, because time doesn't wait for anyone. This mindset led her to be crowned Miss New Brunswick, and the first from New Brunswick to win the title of Miss Canada International, Miss Canada Galaxy, and Ms. Galaxy International. From there, she became a UNICEF Canada ambassador, traveling around the world to inspire leaders, organizations, and youth, sharing love, courage, and wisdom. She has now started her own company called Elevate International to inspire, empower, and elevate women and girls, both locally and globally. Please join me in welcoming Solange.
Wow. My gosh, it's actually quite nerve-wracking. I think I would have prepared being in that box in the back. I am so honored to be here, absolutely honored. One, because I am from New Brunswick, and I rarely get the chance to come here and share my gifts, my talent, and most importantly, my heart. So today, I have this task of talking to you about love and well-being. I mean, can you imagine probably pre-2020 talking about love in the workplace? People would have looked at you really weird. Like, what is she talking about? And then, of course, well-being. It's this thing that we called, what did we call it again? Life balance and something in between that was like a horrible disaster where you felt like you gotta have 30 minutes for your kids and 2 minutes for your husband and 500 hours for your work, and then it was balanced. And it was this thing that we could never achieve, but I think when the pandemic happened, we really understood that this idea of work-life balance had to mean something completely different. For me, it was so easy to understand, and I'll tell you why. So, I have decided to name this talk today, New Beginnings, because I genuinely believe that in everything we do in life, we always have an opportunity for new beginnings. Sometimes it's subconscious, sometimes it's conscious, and when we pay full attention, it becomes something that we do consciously every day out of our own will and the decisions that we make. So like we said, my name is Solange Tuyishime, and I am heart-centered leader. I like to start first that I'm a heart-centered leader because I lead with the heart. And while it's something that seemed so bizarre for so many people for so long, I've always led with my heart. And then, of course, I'm proud to be the president and CEO of Elevate International, and I'll tell you why a little bit later. I always like to share Solange Tuyishime because when we landed in New Brunswick in 1996, and you said your name was, I didn't have the Keita first, you say your name was Solange Tuyishime, and you're at the hospital, you didn't even have to wait 2 minutes. They'd be like, Solange Tai. You're like, yeah, that's me. Got it. We were two families, the only two immigrant families in New Brunswick at the time. And we had the best time of our lives. Just as we discovered how people learn about you and how you learn about others. So when I got married and we added the Keita, I said, for sure I had to add that on. Let's just make it even more complicated. So Solange Tuyishime Keita, it's a proud name that I carry because it just reminds me of how diverse we are, the multiculturalism that lives within us and how we can embrace it all and still be all that we love about who we are. So, love and well-being. Well, here goes for me. Love for me is all about making this world a better place. And it sounds so cliche because everybody talks about making the world a better place, right? And we always think, well, how are we making the world a better place? Because sometimes we're sending emails or we're organizing specific types of jobs, but we don't really think, how is this making the world a better place? Today, we know that companies and organizations that are focused on these two elements are significantly more productive. They're leading a much more positive environment, and they have beautiful cultures within their workplace where people are genuinely happy, which of course creates a more humane society. So how did I get to understand this? It all starts in the beginning. In the beginning, when I was a little girl, I was born and raised in East Africa, and at the age of 11, we would go through a war and genocide. In that moment, I remember when I actually personally, as a child, experienced the first person losing their life when they were being killed. And I remember as a kid, they used to talk to us about praying or wishing or hoping that something will save your life. I didn't know what that meant. All I knew was that it's something that they tell us to do on a regular basis all the time. But in that moment, it was the first time I got on my knees and prayed. It wasn't really based on a religion. It was this idea that I was absolutely terrified for my life. And I quickly understood that no matter what we look like, no matter our gender, our race, our religion, all these external things that the world has created, we are human first. We were terrified the same. And as we lost family members, we mourned the same loss. And as we lost our homes, we felt the same fear and pain. So to me, from that moment, we were human beings first at all times. When we left the country, I will always remember that the sound that stayed with me and that is still vivid with me until today was the sound of children and parents who screamed at the same time. So when we left in a chaos, what happened was, because there were thousands of people leaving the country at the same time, looking for refuge and hoping that their lives will not be taken, parents hung on to their children's hand with their dear life. But because we were moving in such chaos, if you lost your child's hand, chances are you would lose your child forever. But within that same moment, hundreds and thousands of children will yell their parents' voices and names, and the same parents were yelling their children's names. Can you imagine that? That in a moment where thousands of people, no one can hear each other, your heart is still calling for your child. So for me, I understood that all these things that separate us are really just an illusion, because at the core, we are human beings first, seeking to be loved, to belong, and also to be safe. So for me, when we came to our workplace and everything we do in this world, I understood very quickly that we will always be human beings first. So how we lead starts with who we are as human beings. And I share this because as you talk about your new tide, it's all about what you've lived through and your stories. And for me, what I've understood so far is that everything we go through, the stories we go through, are our own superpowers. They are this power that we all hold within. They lie in our ability to shape our identity, to connect, and to inspire change. So how do we navigate these challenges and triumphs? For me, I can tell you how I navigated this. I think I stood in the middle of a refugee camp and I watched other children go to school. And at that moment, we didn't really have much. We lived in a tent, 3 families, 2 tents. And at that point, we were refugees, and that tent became our home. It was our living room, it was our bedroom, it was our everything. But yet, we were very grateful because those who didn't have a tent slept on the streets, and chances are they died eventually because of all the diseases that were going around and the cold at night. So even in some of the most challenging moments, we still found gratitude. But I remember standing there in front of our 2 tents, and I was a little girl, and I had 2 dresses. And even though I was watching other kids go to school and we had nothing, I remember thinking, I had this vivid dream that one day I'll be standing in front of thousands of people and inspiring them to make the world better. And in that moment, I made a commitment that if I ever survived that moment, I would dedicate my life to making this world a better place. But can you imagine an 11-year-old with 2 dresses, sleeping in a tent, having this big vision that one day they'll be standing in front of thousands of people, inspiring them to make the world better? And I hung on to that dream. When we moved from country to country, learning different languages, and by the grace of all the powers that be, we made New Brunswick our home. Of course, you can imagine landing in New Brunswick in November with my warmest sweater that I thought was just gonna do the trick. And we walked out of the airport and we walked right back in the airport because no way I had seen that kind of cold in my life. But you know the wonderful things, as this little girl with big dreams and a big vision who just knew I had an opportunity to create new change in my life, we started school. I was very excited. I learned English and French, and those were my 4th and 5th language. And there I was ready to tackle this world. So I needed friends. Of course, I decided, well, how do I make friends the fastest way? I'm gonna play sports. So I decide that by this time, I'm gonna play soccer. Of course, because you grow up in Africa, you see everybody playing soccer, and soccer is like the sport. So I'm gonna play soccer. So I decide I'm gonna try out for this soccer team, and I had never played in my life. And this poor coach could see in my eyes that I really wanted to be part of this team, and he has no idea how he's gonna utter out of his mouth that I can't make this team, because I absolutely sucked and I had never played this sport before. And no way I was gonna let him just get away with it easily. So he finds a solution and he tells me, you know what, Solange? If you agree to stay on the bench for the entire year, you can be part of the team. I said, wonderful, where do I sign up? And there I was part of the team. I stayed on the bench, and then on the final day, he let me play for 5 minutes. And that was the beginning of a whole new life. 4 years later, I'm captain of the soccer team, and we had led this team to 4 championships, and it had completely changed my life. Thank you. So as a little girl, as a young woman, I had fully understood that sometimes some of our greatest challenges are an opportunity to reinvent ourselves, to recreate ourselves, and also to have this ability that we can become leaders of our own life that eventually turn into leaders of our society. Of course, that led me to my next story. As you heard, there was a Miss Canada. Miss Canada was a big fluke. So at this point, I'm in university. I'm the vice president of the African Student Union, and we used to host this event called African Night. And our final year, we decide that we were going to host this fake pageant of showcasing beauties around the world. We showcased this fake beauty pageant. I happened to win it. It's fake, it's wonderful. And then on Monday morning, I received a phone call from the director of Miss New Brunswick, who at that point I had no clue was the director of Miss New Brunswick. And he said, hi, is this Solange? And I said, yes. I said, we would like to invite you to Miss New Brunswick. And I said, okay, I thought it was my friends. I said, it's very funny, great joke. I'll see you at school. So I hung up. The phone rings again. He says, no, it's Mark. And I said, wonderful, Mark. It was nice conversating with you, so I hung up. And then an email follows. It says, following our discussion, we would like to officially invite you to Miss New Brunswick. I called back and I said, I'm really sorry. But they said, I cannot participate in pageants. I've never done this before, no way. But then I also remember that little girl that made a promise to herself to take all these opportunities in life, to try new things, who thought about inspiring thousands of people. So 5 days before, I called him back and I said, sure, why not? I'll go. So I went. I had never done pageant before in my life. There is a full week of activities. I was just happy to participate and to travel across New Brunswick because I had never done it before. If you can remember, we were just new immigrants and we hadn't really done much. So come final night, there it goes, and they're calling top 10 and top 5, and my name is being called. At this point, my parents, my good old African parents, are absolutely terrified that they're gonna see their daughter in a swimsuit on stage. That was their worry. Me, on my end, I don't know what I was gonna wear because I didn't think that I was gonna make any top of anything. So here I am when they call me on top 10 and we have to go on stage and we have to actually deliver remarks and we have to wear a gown, which I don't have. So the other girls put me in something. I had a Walmart dress that I put on. We needed nylons. I didn't have nylons, so my wonderful white friends gave me white people nylons. It's black over here and all white over here, but we look wonderful. We just went for it. I was just happy that we can collectively come together to make these things happen. It looked like a hot mess, but inside it was a beautiful hot mess full of love. And there I was, I became Miss New Brunswick. I was absolutely surprised, but then I thought to myself, what do you do with this opportunity? Then I remembered that I was a girl who survived the war and genocide and who became a refugee and who knew that I was living in a place where I could share my story and inspire people to think differently about how we function as human beings and how we make the world better. And then, so that is what led me to eventually becoming Miss Canada and leading me to becoming a UNICEF Canada ambassador. At that point, I thought I had understood what resilience is. I felt that resilience was this opportunity for us to bounce back, to reinvent our stories, to just take every opportunity we get as something that's happening for us. I really thought I understood what resilience was, and that was going to help me become a greater leader in this world. What I didn't know was that life wanted to strengthen that resilience. Just when I thought my cup was full, I was like, really? Like, I think I get resilience. So after Miss Canada, I went on and became a UNICEF Canada ambassador. I took the funds that I was given as a scholarship from Miss Canada. I did my master's in public administration. I had a wonderful job. I met this wonderful, handsome man who eventually became my husband. And we just lived a beautiful life. I thought, this life is good. Like, I've made it. I thought I was like the poster child for the UN. Like, that was it for me. So we decided we were gonna have a family. And first pregnancy didn't work out. I learned about what women go through and the number of miscarriages. I really understood more and more about humanity. But then second pregnancy, we are in the ultrasound room and they said, so we have news. And I said, yes, tell me more. At this point, I'm waiting, like, we're gonna have a baby. And he said, you're pregnant? I said, yes, I know, that's why we're here. I said, well, we have 3 babies. I said, say that again? You're gonna have triplets. So I start laughing. So the nurse doesn't know what to do because I'm still laughing. My husband, on the other hand, has no clue what to do with himself. He's holding my hand so tight. I'm still laughing. So at this point, it's very awkward in this room. So long story short, apparently 1 in 2 million people can naturally have identical triplets. That was me. Didn't play the lottery that day. I should have, because we would be talking about a whole other different type of lifestyle, maybe private jets. But I was having identical triplets. I didn't know anything other than the fact that my life has been a sum of huge surprises, and of course this was one of them. So I just took it as it is. I felt that for someone who had survived so much in life, this was just another addition, part of my blessings, and things were happening for me. So, the journey was challenging in itself, but it was also rewarding. Through that journey, I think for me, I kept thinking about what would have happened had I been a woman who had been pregnant with identical triplets during a war, a genocide, or a refugee camp, and chances are I knew that all 4 of us wouldn't have survived. So I found so much gratitude in that journey, and I understood that whatever was meant to happen was always going to happen for me. So on September 3rd, 2013, 3 beautiful babies were born in 5 minutes. It was the most magical moment of my life. And I thought, if I didn't know what a miracle was, this is it. So Aliyah, Nyla, and Layla were born in 5 minutes, all crying, happy and healthy, and we had survived. And I thought, wow, what an incredible moment. I mean, how do you top this? I was so grateful for that moment that I remember thinking, I will forever be grateful for all that I've got to experience, because I know that there are many people in this world who will never experience that, and that will be our own unique story. What I didn't know was that 10 days later, I'll receive a phone call. Of course, when identical triplets are born, they stay at the neonatal intensive care unit for a while. What I didn't know is that this beautiful identical triplets, 10 days later, I will get a phone call that said, "Is this the mom of the triplets?" And I said, "Yes." It said, "Unfortunately, one of the triplets is not doing well, and we wanted to see when you were coming in." Of course, you get that gut feeling, right? So I asked and I said, "We normally come in at 11 o'clock. Would you still like us to come in at 11, or do you want us to come in now?" The answer was as soon as possible. So I knew something was not right. When we arrived at the hospital, our beautiful baby Nyla was hooked on every machine possible, and they had been trying to keep her alive until we get there. What I loved about that moment is that the minute I touched her hand was the first time she opened her eyes. So I knew that she knew her mom was there. And she knew that she was loved and protected. 7 hours later of fighting with every surgeon you can think about, every nurse, everyone had tried everything. And they would ask me the hardest question: do you want us to continue working and keep her alive, or would you like us to give you a moment and say goodbye? My wonderful husband says, "I will go with what you wish for." As a mom, you want to hang on to every inch of your child. No way you want to let that go. But I also understood that this wonderful child that had given us every fighting chance, that had opened her eyes every time I had touched her hand, had given me everything she could. I wanted to be selfish and keep her, but I also knew she had done her work. So at 9 p.m. on September 13, I would say goodbye. They would unhook her on every machine. I would hold her in my arms, and every 2 minutes I would come and check if her heart had stopped breathing. Probably the hardest moment of my entire life. Outside of everything I had lived, the war, the genocide, everything, I couldn't figure out, how do you breathe again? That was the one thing I was absolutely mad about. How will I breathe again after this? And how do I figure out how I will keep functioning in this world, knowing that now my heart has to hold on this type of pain? In that same moment, I was, of course, in the neonatal intensive care unit. Our 2 other babies were sleeping, and I had just made the hardest decision of my life. And a part of me wanted to scream so loud and cry the hardest. But I also knew that there were so many moms in our room who their children were the intensive care unit, who deserved hope and who wanted to hang on to every hope that their babies was gonna be okay. So I took my baby and I walked out of the room so that they could have the hope that they deserved. And in that moment, I learned that even through our darkest moments, we have the ability to be present, to be in gratitude, and to walk with courage. I was present because I understood that 3,000 mothers lose a baby every day. And I also understood that I had seen people fight for my child all day and all night to keep her alive. I had had that opportunity. So I was present when she took her last breath so she can know that we shared it together. I was in full gratitude of knowing the amount of people that had contributed to us having that moment and opportunity. So then I understood what resilience is. I shared this story with you because I know this is about innovation, and we talk about how we unite people. I share this with you because your industry has gone through some of the challenging moments that you spend by yourself, that other people didn't get to understand how much you missed doing the work that you do, uniting the people that you do. I share this with you because you have demonstrated resilience at a time that people didn't understand the challenges you were navigating internally. So my friends, you are resilient. It may not have been life and death at the core the way I experienced it, but it is still life and death because you mourn your ability to deliver your greatest gifts to the world in a place where people are not seeing how much you're feeling it internally. So then, what do we become, the people who have gone through all this? I say we're on a mission. I always say that us as people, we're on a mission to lead with love, understanding, and compassion. It's probably one of my favorite things because after you go through challenging seasons, and they can be the biggest or not even as a grand magnitude as you imagine them. But what I love about this mission is that we start treating people differently. I love that now that I understand all this, that life is a gift and it can change at any given moment. I mean, nobody saw March 8th coming. It was like, what? We all said we'll see each other next week. And then the world completely shut down. But what I love is that everything we went through and all these challenging moments we go through changes how we deal with people. I love that sometimes if I think of you, I'll send you a quick note and I said, hey, hope the planning of your conference is going well. Cheers to your team. Because I understood that when you think of someone, it's our way of sending blessings and gratitude and love in this world. So why would you take that away from someone? So I love that this mission is based in action on how we treat others, how we conversate, and also how we're kind to ourselves. which of course has led me to everything we do is human first. We lead with empathy, regardless of our roles and responsibilities. I mean, there were times where people's roles felt like they could speak a certain way or request things in a certain manner, and that doesn't work anymore. Because when people give you 8 to 10 hours of their day, it means they've actually spent more time with you than anybody else. They're most loving people in the world, who includes their partners, their kids, their parents. So you have to treat them with love and kindness. And of course, you of all people, this is the best group where we can talk about unity, because you have the greatest gift of uniting people and making them feel loved, belonged, and special. This is the room where we can actually emphasize on unity, because we remember that at the core, we unite as human beings. And compassion, my gosh, let's be kind to one another. Lately, I don't know what's happening with social media. Certain platforms have even gone on a whole other tangent. But I think we remember that as we interact with each other, as we bring together people for events and celebrations and discussions, that we are leading with kindness. This new chapter, as you enter this journey, as you understand this new tide, of course, we've all understood that we're navigating different challenges and also different joys. So as we take that into how we are dealing with each other, how we function, how we collaborate, compassion comes first. But I think the greatest thing about this is my favorite quote. I'll tell you why. So let me pause on these lessons. Let me tell you why I love this, my favorite quote. So after we had the triplets, I looked at my husband and I said, listen, if we're gonna do this baby thing again, we're gonna do it now or never again. So we had a fourth child, of course, one in heaven, and then at that point, we have 3 babies under 3. We're back to the same thing. When we brought our youngest home, Samia, my milk hadn't come in yet, so this baby is absolutely hungry, and these 2 ones are teething. And it's 3 in the morning, this one is crying over here, and my husband is holding 2 babies walking around. And we looked at each other and we're like, oh my gosh, what did we do? And then I turned around and I look at him and I said, you touch me one more time. And then he says, do people know you threaten me in the middle of the night? And I said that to me one more time. But the thing was, I had just lived so many big moments of the greatest joys and the greatest sadness. And I think a part of me felt so guilty to have a moment for me. I thought I was supposed to have it all figured out. Best mom, best wife, best everything in the world. I thought I can do this by myself. So the idea of having a moment for me, for my mental health, for therapy, for anything, I felt guilty because I wanted to give it all to everyone. If everyone was taken care of, then I was gonna be happy. That's not how it works. I was a hot mess. So, but I remember the first time, thinking, maybe I should do therapy because I am grieving the loss of a child. And maybe I should start going back to the gym and do a little yoga. But then the minute I would think I'm going to the gym, I would say, oh no, but the kids are gonna need me and they're gonna cry. And I had all these excuses for taking care of everyone else, but not me. And little did I know that I was absolutely miserable inside. I couldn't remember where the funny Solange was, the happy Solange was. All these beautiful things that I knew about me, I couldn't find them. So one day I was crying and I was I felt absolutely lonely in a world where I was surrounded by so many people. And I remember saying, I gotta start taking care of myself. So I wrote this quote. I have no clue where it came from. I don't know if I made it up. I don't know if I read it in a book. All I know is that I wrote it down in my journal. And the next day, I wrote on a piece of paper and put tape on the wall. And then I would repeat to myself, you are not required to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. And that's how I started investing back in myself. That's how I started booking my monthly therapy meetings. That's how I started going to the gym every morning and finding myself. And slowly by slowly, I could dance again with the kids in the kitchen. I could go and have fun with my girlfriends. I could sit down and invite everybody for brunch. That's how I found myself. So to you who has navigated one of the most challenging moments in our time, especially recently, as you take back your power and as you take back your role, just remember that self-care is part of the leader that you are becoming that's gonna make you a happier, brilliant, amazing, and loving leader because you are loving yourself first. So yes, we are not required to set ourselves on fire to keep others warm. So, thank you. So this is the moment where we talk about taking our power back. You are taking your power back. You are about to transform the world. You're about to change how we interact. Gosh, we just saw it in the beginning. I think my next keynote put me in the Bahamas, just especially in November. But you are about to completely transform how we interact, how we're going to feel, how people are going to feel when they attend conferences and gatherings and celebrations. And as you take your power back, this is where we make a commitment to be the change of everything we've learned, all the beautiful lessons, and all the things that have happened for us. Because I genuinely believe that when we go through difficult moments, challenging moments, or any type of opportunity, we have two choices. It's either we can allow them to destroy us, which I absolutely don't believe. Because every time we go through something like something significantly challenging, I always stop and ask myself, okay, universe, what do you want me to learn? What door are you closing that didn't belong to me so that I can walk in a greater door and make a greater difference? Or what power do you want me to activate within me so that I can be a better leader? So it's always working for us. So this, of course, is our commitment to be the change, because I genuinely believe that together we make the world better. And I want to leave you with the last story of, as you take on this new tide, for me, what that looks like, it looks like 3 weeks ago, I had collectively raised $3.6 million for children in over 190 countries and territories who are facing some of the most challenging circumstances. Because I understood that having been a refugee, having been through a war and a genocide, made me understand firsthand what the children are going through around the world. As we think about the world today, and you know what is happening globally, and how divided the world is on matters that we shouldn't be divided on, where we should first be thinking about human beings, we know that children are suffering the most. So as you can tell, being a young kid who was a refugee, absolutely terrified, who is now a grown woman who carries PTSD all the time, it also happened for me because that reality has allowed me to raise $3.6 million for children to be safe, to have access to school, education, and more. And I hope that is just the beginning of my story. How this story happens for me, it also happens for me because just 3 days ago, I delivered 1,000 sanitary napkins to girls in the Bahamas so that they don't have to miss 50 days of school. Having lived that experience really helped me change that story and that narrative for other people. Of course, my last story is, how do I become president of Elevate International? And this comes back to thinking, why is this happening for me? You see, I think when we lost our daughter, I was so embedded in just doing work because it's a job. It pays the bills, it pays well, and that's what we do. But I really had tapped out of what is my purpose? What am I here for? And I don't think we take time often to really think about, why do I do this work? And what difference is it making in this world? So after we lost our daughter, I didn't want my life to be a sum of painful moments. So I wanted to make meaning of it. And I also didn't want to just say, I'm staying alive for my children. I wanted to stay alive for me. So I wanted to think about my purpose and what that is. I knew that I was raising funds for the most vulnerable children globally, and I knew that we can keep fundraising for some of our favorite charities. But I also understood that there are many equity-seeking groups that never have a voice at the leadership table. For me, firsthand, had been women and children. I was already working with the children, but I also knew that women rarely have a seat at the senior executive leadership table. And all these decisions happen for us and without us. This is just an example for me, based on my experience. But I know that there's so many equity-seeking groups and deserving that do not have a voice at the leadership table. So then my last mission on this, as we change, as we take on this new tide, as we are the voice of change, make sure that your leadership tables is inclusive of all people. And it also not just inclusive, that their voices are being heard and being implemented. That is how we're going to make the world a better place. So I am so grateful that I've been given this opportunity to be here with you today. And I am so grateful that you are taking on this opportunity to create a better world for people. So as we unite, think about the various voices and think about how you are loving yourself and the compassion and the love and the empathy that you're sharing amongst the people that you work with and those who walk around you and in our society. Thank you so much, and I'm grateful.